Cuba.
Tonight, credit card ripoffs, how to keep from being victimized. Health concerns prompt an early start on fixing up the war memorial. And was it poor planning that caused the Alaska oil spill?
For a similar thing to happen at a major oil port anywhere, again, is only a matter of time.
Bob Kirk, Liz Ayers, Marty Skold, and John Eads. This is News Center 5.
Good evening. Liz is off tonight. Lynn Houston is joining us. A Syracuse couple will spend up to 14 years in prison for running a credit card scam. Virginia and Godofredo Ramirez were found guilty of using someone else's credit cards to buy more than $60,000 in merchandise. Authorities say it all started when the couple sent in a pre-approved bank credit card that had been addressed to the former owners of their Liverpool home. Well, tonight, Elizabeth Draper spoke with a consumer expert to find out how not to become a victim. Elizabeth?
Well, Bob, in a case like this one where a pre-approved loan is sent in, consumer experts say there's really only one precaution to take. That is to make sure all creditors are notified of a move. But with other types of credit card fraud, there are additional precautions to take. Many people are only careful about racking up big credit card bills. But a consumer expert says people need to be careful every time they bring out the plastic.
Over $500 million a year is what the cost of lost or stolen or misappropriated use of credit cards or charge cards is. So it's quite a large problem, and unfortunately, a lot of it is due to carelessness.
PV had several suggestions for protection. When a new card arrives, sign it right away and cut up the old one. Make a list of all credit cards and the addresses. Don't keep cards in a wallet. When making a purchase, keep the card in view. Get a receipt. Make sure it's completely filled out. Put it in a safe place and destroy carbons. And when the bill arrives, compare it with the receipts you have saved.
If you haven't lost your credit card or it hasn't been stolen, unless you check your bill, you're not going to know if someone's misappropriately used your number.
PV says all consumers pay for credit card fraud with higher prices.
Elizabeth, we hear a lot about not giving your phone number out over, when people call about this, giving credit card numbers out over the phone. What do authorities recommend?
Well, LEPV advises that if you make the phone call, say for instance you want to buy something and you feel comfortable with the business, then go ahead and give out that number. But if someone calls you, then don't give out any numbers.
Okay, Elizabeth Draper, thanks so much. Concern over asbestos has forced the county to start renovations of the War Memorial earlier than planned. The asbestos is presently underneath a few inches of cellulose on the ceiling. Now, the county had planned to remove it in 1992 when the renovations were originally scheduled, but that was moved up because of health concerns.
What we've seen over the last year is that, particularly in the north end of the arena, material has continued to delaminate at a rate that we didn't consider acceptable, and we thought that the county should be advised of that at that time. I can't predict in 4 years how much worse the situation would be, but I don't think it's something that we want to let go that long.
For now, the seats closest to the ceiling are being removed before the project begins later this year. The asbestos removal will close the War Memorial for 3 months.
How safe are the nation's school buses? The National Transportation Safety Board says thousands of old buses should be taken off the roads because they do not meet federal safety standards. In central New York, there are only a handful of old buses operating. 3 are operating in the Onondaga Central School District. Officials say New York's safety standards are even higher than the federal government's.
New York State currently has one of the toughest standards in buses built. We have a very good safety record. Our training is excellent in the state, far better in many other states around. The buses are built to a very exacting standard, and they have been since the beginning for the last 20 years. Even these pre-77s were the state of the art at the time.
The cost of one new bus is over $40,000. With the state budget cuts on the way, school officials are deeply concerned whether there'll be enough money to buy the buses. Governor Mario Cuomo has a new target, getting the assault weapons off the streets. Today, just after watching a police sergeant shoot an Uzi semi-automatic, Cuomo proposed a bill to ban weapons for all but target shooters. If passed, New York would be the first state to enact such a law. Cuomo calls the weapons instruments of death and says the restriction is needed because more drug traffickers are using the guns. Under the bill, people with licenses would be able to use assault weapons in gun clubs.
Jury deliberations begin tomorrow in the state Supreme Court murder trial of 47-year-old Frank Gilliam. Gilliam is charged in last year's shooting death of Theodore Shepard outside an East Water Street apartment building. On the stand today, Gilliam claimed a domestic dispute led to a fist fight with Shepard. He says when Shepard pulled a knife, he pulled a gun and fired a warning shot.
I tried to get in the car. I went to go to the car, but he kept coming, so I just turned around and started firing. Firing, stepping in the car. I really don't know. I just kept pulling the trigger.
The prosecution claims there was no knife drawn by the victim and that Gilliam killed the man in cold blood.
30 pro-choice advocates had their day in court after holding a protest in Binghamton. The group was charged with trespassing after blocking the doors to Operation Rescue's headquarters. They were turning the tables on Operation Rescue. That Right to Life group has staged protests across the country, twice in Syracuse.
We've obviously shut it down, and
they're not coming to this meeting, right?
They're not coming to this meeting because we're going to stay here through that. We have a victory here.
An Operation Rescue spokesman says the protest had little impact on the organization's day. Employees simply went to work 15 minutes later than usual.
If you ever have pain in your hands or wake with stiff fingers, you may be one of thousands of American workers who experience repetitive motion sickness or carpal tunnel syndrome. In the first of a three-part series, Tracy Davidson explains the problem that's become a #1 concern among labor unions.
Hundreds of Central New Yorkers work with a partner every day, every hour. The electronic partner makes tasks easier than in years gone by. But video display terminals present problems of their own, not the least of which is carpal tunnel syndrome.
People are having numbness in their hands and their wrists, pains in their arms, numbness in their fingers. They'll pick up things and be able to grasp them.
For many unions, repetitive motion problems are being addressed in contracts for the very first time.
Basically that the companies, the employers in general, are not understanding the amount of problems that people are having.
Well, I think we're concerned that there is their concern. First of all, we know some of our jobs are repetitive, as are many jobs in other industries.
Williams says his company is doing everything it can to improve the work environment. Officials will continue to investigate the problem. For county workers, the concern is the same.
We have had many workers that I know have been out with injuries to their hands caused by computers or calculators, motion that is constant in nature.
In fact, county workers, along with county officials, have formed a VDT committee to determine the problems of video display terminals and how to solve them. Dale King himself has had an operation on both hands because of computer work.
The fingers and the hand goes completely numb. Pens will drop from your hand, not even knowing that you've dropped the pen. You completely lose the feeling in your fingers.
But carpal tunnel syndrome also strikes workers who don't use computers. Tomorrow, a look at other repetitive motion occupations that can lead to carpal tunnel syndrome, a problem that left alone can leave a worker's hands numb and useless. Tracy Davidson, News Center 5.
Next from News Center 5, charges of mismanagement surface in America's worst oil spill.
And U.S. drug agents break the back of a $1 billion cocaine cartel.